Jeho pulled her thin jacket closer as the cold wind swept through the streets of New Seoul. The year was 2157, but the chill of winter felt the same as it had a century ago. The only difference was the warm, purple glow from the floating advertisement screens that filled the night sky, making the stars impossible to see. She watched as people hurried past, their faces lit by the soft blue light of their neural implants. Jeho touched the spot behind her ear where her own implant used to be. She had sold it 6 months ago to buy food. That was when things had gotten really bad. The streets weren't as crowded as usual tonight. Most people were probably at home, watching the big news about the aliens. The Celestial Confederation, they called themselves. They had arrived 3 months ago, and everything had changed. Well, not for Jeho. She was still hungry, still homeless, and still invisible to most people. A group of teenagers walked past, laughing and pointing at a holographic game floating between them. Jeho remembered when she used to teach students like them. Back then, she had been Professor Park Jeho, leading expert in quantum engineering at Seoul National University. Now she was just another shadow in the streets, another forgotten face in the crowd. She checked her pocket. The small digital counter showed she had enough credits for 2 more days at the public sleeping pod, but nothing for food. Jeho hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her stomach felt like it was trying to eat itself. That's when she saw him. At first, she thought the purple-tinted windows of the nearby shop were playing tricks on her eyes. But no, the figure walking down the street really was 9 feet tall. His skin had a slight bluish tinge, and his business suit seemed to shimmer with tiny points of light, like a piece of the night sky had been turned into cloth. An alien, a real alien, walking alone on her street. Jeho's first instinct was to hide. But then she saw something in the alien's walk, in the way he was looking around with what seemed like curiosity. He didn't have the usual fear or disgust that most well-dressed people showed when they walked through this part of town. Instead, he seemed interested. Her stomach growled again, loud enough that a passing woman gave her a dirty look. Jeho made her decision. The worst the alien could do was say no, just like everyone else did. She stepped forward, trying to straighten her back and remember how she used to carry herself when she was a professor. The alien was even taller up close. She had to crane her neck to look up at him. "Excuse me," she said, her voice scratchy from lack of use. "Would you be kind enough to spare 1 credit? Just 1 credit for some food." The alien stopped. His eyes were surprising. They looked almost human, except for the small golden flecks that seemed to float in them. He tilted his head slightly, and Jeho felt a strange tingling sensation in her mind, like the feeling just before solving a complex equation. "You are hungry," he said. His voice was deep but gentle, with perfect Korean pronunciation. "But that is not what interests me most about you." Jeho blinked in surprise. Usually, people either ignored her completely or quickly gave her a few credits to make her go away. Nobody actually talked to her anymore. "I am Ambassador Shaq of the Celestial Confederation," the alien continued. "And you, I believe, are far more than you appear to be." By now, a small crowd had gathered. It wasn't every day you saw a 9-foot-tall alien talking to a homeless woman. Some people had their neural implants out, recording everything. Jeho wanted to shrink away from all the attention, but something in the ambassador's golden-flecked eyes held her in place. "I don't understand," she said. "I just asked for 1 credit." Shaq smiled, and somehow the expression looked natural on his blue-tinted face. "Let me ask you something. When you look at the quantum advertising boards above us, do you see the equations behind them? Do the numbers dance in your mind, showing you how they could be more efficient, more elegant?" Jeho felt her breath catch in her throat. How did he know? She had always seen numbers and patterns that way, even as a child. It was what had made her such a good quantum engineer. But how could this alien know about that? "Yes," she whispered. "Always. But how did you?" "Security breach." A sharp voice cut through their conversation. Step away from the ambassador. 3 police officers were pushing through the crowd, led by a tall man with a stern face and a glowing security badge. Chief Hanbin. Jeho recognized him from the news broadcasts. He was in charge of alien security. "This woman is harassing you, Ambassador," Hanbin asked, his hand resting on his pulse weapon. "On the contrary," Shaq said calmly. "I believe I have just made a most fascinating discovery." He turned back to Jeho. "You asked me for 1 credit. Instead, I would like to offer you an opportunity. Would you be willing to come with me to the Confederation Embassy? There is something I would like to test." Hanbin's eyes widened. "Ambassador, with all due respect, this is highly irregular. We need to follow proper protocols for civilian contact, especially with—" He glanced at Jeho's ragged clothes. "Unknown individuals." "Chief Hanbin," Shaq said, his voice taking on a formal tone, "I am invoking Confederation Protocol 7 Alpha. This human shows signs of natural quantum computational abilities. If I am correct, she may be exactly what we have been searching for." The crowd was growing larger now. Jeho could hear people whispering, taking pictures with their neural implants. She felt exposed, vulnerable. Part of her wanted to run away and hide in the underground shelters where she usually spent her days. But a stronger part, the part that had once spent sleepless nights solving impossible equations, wanted to know more. "What do you mean, quantum computational abilities?" she asked, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. Shaq's eyes seemed to glow slightly brighter. "Your species has barely scratched the surface of quantum mechanics, but some humans, very rare ones, are born with brains that naturally process quantum information. We have been searching for such individuals across the galaxy. They are essential for our research into the fundamental nature of consciousness and reality itself." He reached into his shimmering suit and pulled out what looked like a small crystal. It caught the purple light from the advertising boards and broke it into impossible patterns. "Would you hold this for me?" he asked. Before Chief Hanbin could object, Jeho reached out and took the crystal. The moment her fingers touched it, her mind exploded with numbers and patterns. She saw quantum fields folding through 11 dimensions, saw how reality itself was just a shadow of deeper mathematical truths. Without thinking, she began to explain what she was seeing. The crowd had fallen completely silent. Even Chief Hanbin was staring at her with his mouth slightly open. Jeho realized she had slipped into using advanced quantum mathematics terminology, just like she used to do in her lectures. Shaq gently took the crystal back. "As I suspected," he said, satisfaction evident in his voice. "Chief Hanbin, I am officially requesting this human's presence at the Confederation Embassy for further testing. She may be crucial to the future of both our species." Hanbin looked between the tall alien and the ragged woman, clearly struggling with the protocol for this situation. Finally, he sighed. "I'll need to call this in. And we'll need to verify her identity." "Park Jeho," she said quietly, former professor of quantum engineering at Seoul National University. It felt strange to say her old title again, like putting on clothes that no longer fit quite right. Hanbin's eyebrows shot up as he checked something on his neural implant. "Professor Park, but you disappeared 3 years ago during the economic crisis. Your daughter, she filed a missing persons report." Jeho felt her heart twist at the mention of her daughter. Yuna had tried to help when things got bad, but Jeho hadn't wanted to be a burden. Better to disappear than to drag her daughter down with her. "Would you be willing to come with us, Professor Park?" Shaq asked formally. "I promise you will be treated with all the respect your abilities deserve." Jeho looked around at the crowd, at the floating advertisements that had always spoken to her in the language of mathematics, at the city it had both created and destroyed her. She had asked for 1 credit. Instead, she was being offered a chance to be herself again, to use her mind the way she used to. "Yes," she said. "I'll come with you." As Chief Hanbin called for a transport and Shaq began making arrangements through his own alien communications device, Jeho felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. She had always seen the world differently from others, had always understood things that seemed impossible to most people. Maybe that wasn't a curse after all. Maybe it was finally going to be a gift. The transport arrived, hovering silently above the street. As Jeho stepped into it alongside the alien ambassador, she caught her reflection in the window. Behind her, the quantum advertising boards continued their endless dance of light and mathematics. But for the first time in years, she wasn't watching their patterns. Instead, she was watching herself, seeing not a homeless woman, but a professor, a quantum engineer, and perhaps something even more important, a key to understanding the universe itself. The transport's doors closed with a soft hiss, and Jeho left her old life behind. She had asked for one credit, but instead, she had been given a chance to change everything. As the transport rose into the purple-lit sky of New Seoul, she began to explain to Shaq exactly what she had seen in the crystal's quantum patterns, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt truly alive. The Confederation Embassy looked like a building from a dream. It seemed to float above the ground, its walls shimmering with the same star-like points of light as Ambassador Shaq's suit. Jeho sat in a comfortable chair, trying not to stare at everything around her. The room they had brought her to was both simple and impossible. Its corners seemed to bend in ways that shouldn't exist. After they arrived, the embassy staff had given her clean clothes and a hot meal. Jeho couldn't remember the last time she had eaten real food. She had tried to eat slowly, to be polite, but hunger had won out. Now, feeling full for the first time in weeks, she waited for whatever tests the ambassador had mentioned. Chief Hanbin stood by the door, looking uncomfortable. He kept checking his neural implant, probably running background checks on her. Jeho didn't mind. Her past was nothing to be ashamed of. "Are you feeling better, Professor Park?" Shaq asked as he entered the room. He had changed into what looked like more casual clothes, though they still shimmered with starlight. "Yes, thank you," Jeho said. "And please, just Jeho is fine. I haven't been a professor for a long time." "That may change soon," Shaq said, sitting down across from her. "But first, I need to explain what I saw in you, and why it matters so much." He placed 3 objects on the table between them. The crystal from before, a small pyramid that seemed to be made of liquid metal, and what looked like an ordinary marble. "Our species has been studying quantum consciousness for 10,000 years, Shaq began. "We learned long ago that consciousness itself is a quantum phenomenon. Most beings process quantum information in very simple ways, but some, very rare individuals, can do it naturally, instinctively. Like you." Jeho looked at the objects on the table. Already her mind was filling with equations, showing her how the quantum fields around them twisted and danced. "When you were a professor," Shaq continued, "did you ever wonder why you could solve problems that stumped other scientists? Why you could see solutions that seemed to come from nowhere?" Jeho nodded slowly. "I always saw numbers and patterns differently. My daughter Yuna used to say I was living in my own world sometimes." The memory of Yuna brought a sharp pain to her chest. "You were seeing quantum reality directly," Shaq explained. "Your brain can process quantum information as easily as others process visual information. It's a talent so rare we've only found 67 beings with this ability in the entire galaxy." Chief Hanbin stepped forward. "Ambassador, are you saying Professor Park is some kind of quantum psychic?" Shaq made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Nothing so mysterious, Chief Hanbin. It's a natural ability, like perfect pitch or photographic memory, but far more valuable." He pushed the liquid metal pyramid toward Jeho. "Would you describe what you see when you look at this?" Jeho stared at the pyramid. Numbers and equations filled her mind, but these were different from before. "It's broken," she said slowly. "The quantum field is twisted wrong. It should flow like water, but it's stuck, like ice that froze in the wrong shape." Shakhtar's eyes brightened with excitement. "This is a quantum computer core from one of our ships. It's been malfunctioning for months, and none of our engineers can figure out why. You saw the problem in seconds." "I could fix it," Jaiho said without thinking. Her fingers itched to reach out and touch the pyramid, to reshape its quantum fields into their proper form. "I believe you could," Shakhtar said, "just as I believe you could help us with dozens of other projects. The Confederation has been looking for someone with your ability since we first contacted Earth." Chief Hanbin cleared his throat. "This is all very impressive, but there are procedures to follow. We can't just—" A soft chime interrupted him. Someone was requesting entry to the room. The door opened to reveal a woman in an expensive business suit, followed by 2 more police officers. "Dr. Sunmei," Chief Hanbin said, sounding surprised. "What are you doing here?" The woman strode into the room, her heels clicking on the floor. She barely glanced at Jaiho before addressing Shakhtar directly. "Ambassador, I apologize for this interruption, but as head of the Earth Confederation Science Council, I must object to this irregular procedure. This woman hasn't been vetted. She's been living on the streets for years. We have dozens of qualified scientists ready to work with the Confederation." Jaiho felt herself shrinking in her chair. Dr. Sunmi's words brought back all the shame and pain of her fall from grace. Maybe this had all been a mistake. But then she looked at the quantum objects on the table, saw the beautiful mathematics dancing around them, and sat up straighter. This was who she was. No amount of time on the streets could change that. "Dr. Sunma," Shakhtar said calmly, "would you look at this, please?" He handed her the crystal Jaiho had examined earlier. Sunmi took it confidently. "Yes, it's a quantum storage crystal. We've been studying these for months." "And what do you see in its quantum structure?" "Well, our instruments show it has a complex multilayered field that—" "No," Shakhtar interrupted gently. "What do you see, right now, with your own mind?" Sunmi frowned. "I don't understand what you mean." "Jaiho," Shakhtar turned to her. "Would you tell Dr. Sunmi what you see?" Jaiho took a deep breath. When she spoke, she used her professor voice, the one she had used to explain complex theories to students. "The crystal has 17 quantum layers, each rotating through 11 dimensions. The 3rd and 12th layers are slightly misaligned, creating a harmonic resonance that affects the storage capacity. If you adjusted the phase relationship by 0.003 degrees, you could increase its efficiency by 42%. The room fell silent. Sunmai stared at her, then at the crystal, then back at her. That's impossible," Sunmai said. "We would need weeks of testing with our most advanced equipment to see that level of detail." "Yet she saw it instantly," Shakhtar said, "just as she saw the flaw in our quantum computer core. This is why we've been searching the galaxy for people like her. They can perceive and understand quantum systems in ways our most advanced technology cannot match." Sunmi's face had gone pale. "But she's been homeless. She's been out of academia for years. How can she possibly?" "Living on the streets doesn't change who you are inside," Jaiho said quietly. "I lost my job, my home, my possessions, but I never lost my ability to see the numbers, to understand the patterns. They were my only friends some nights." Shakhtar nodded approvingly. "The Confederation doesn't care about social status or current circumstances. We care about ability, and Jaiho has an ability that could advance both our species' understanding of quantum physics by decades." Chief Hanbin, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. Her background check just came through. "Professor Park's academic record is impressive. Multiple breakthrough papers on quantum engineering. Awards for her teaching. No criminal record. The only mark against her is declaring bankruptcy during the economic crisis, which happened to millions of people," Jaiho added. "Even brilliant scientists need to eat." Sunmai looked torn between professional jealousy and scientific curiosity. Finally, curiosity won out. "Those adjustments you mentioned, to the crystal's phase relationship. Could you show me exactly what you mean? Jai-ho smiled for what felt like the first time in years. Better than that. I can show you 3 other ways to improve its efficiency that you haven't even discovered yet. For the next hour, Jai-ho explained what she saw in the quantum fields around them. She drew equations in the air, using the embassy's holographic systems to show how the quantum patterns moved and flowed. Sun-mai asked increasingly complex questions, her initial skepticism forgotten in the excitement of new discovery. Even Chief Hanbin seemed fascinated, though Jai-ho suspected he didn't understand most of what she was saying. Shaq simply watched with what looked like satisfaction. Finally, Sun-mai sat back in her chair, looking slightly dazed. "Ambassador," she said, "I withdraw my objection. This woman, her understanding of quantum mechanics is beyond anything I've ever seen. We need her on the Science Council." "That's not quite what I had in mind," Shaq said. "Jai-ho, I would like to offer you a position as the first human quantum consciousness researcher at the Confederation's main research institute. You would work directly with our top scientists, helping us understand how human minds can process quantum information naturally. Your insights could help us develop new technologies, advance our understanding of consciousness itself, and help Earth take its place as a full member of the galactic community." Jai-ho's heart raced. It was more than she could have dreamed of this morning, when she was just hoping for enough credits to buy food. "But, my daughter," she said, "Yuna, I need to make things right with her first." "Of course," Shaq said. "We can help you find her. The position will be waiting for you when you're ready." As if on cue, Chief Hanbin's neural implant chimed. He checked it, and his eyes widened slightly. "That won't be necessary," he said. "Your daughter is here, Professor Park. She's asking to see you." Jai-ho felt her heart skip a beat. After 3 years of hiding, of shame, of not wanting to burden her daughter with her failures, Yuna was here. And this time, Jai-ho had something to offer besides apologies. She had a future again. "Send her in," she said softly. As they waited for Yuna to be escorted to the room, Jai-ho looked at the quantum objects on the table. Their complex fields twisted and danced, full of mathematical beauty that most people would never see. But she saw it. She had always seen it. And now, finally, that gift would let her rebuild her life. She wasn't just a homeless woman anymore. She wasn't even just a former professor. She was something entirely new, a bridge between human and alien understanding of the quantum universe itself. And her daughter was about to see her mother standing tall again, ready to help change the world. The moment Yuna walked into the room, Jai-ho forgot about quantum fields and alien ambassadors. Her daughter had grown even more beautiful in the 3 years since Jai-ho had last seen her. Yuna stopped in the doorway, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. Her mother in clean clothes, sitting at a table with Earth's most important alien visitor. "Mom." Yuna's voice trembled. "Is it really you?" Jai-ho stood up slowly. "Yes, Yuna. I'm sorry I stayed away so long. I didn't want you to see me like that." Yuna crossed the room in quick steps and wrapped her arms around her mother. Jai-ho felt tears on her shoulder as her daughter cried. "I looked for you everywhere," Yuna whispered. "Why didn't you let me help you?" "I was ashamed," Jai-ho said softly. "I was supposed to take care of you, not the other way around." Someone cleared their throat politely. Jai-ho looked up to see Shaq watching them, with what seemed like genuine warmth in his golden-flecked eyes. "Perhaps this would be a good time to discuss the proposal in detail," the ambassador said. "Miss Yuna, would you like to stay? This concerns you as well." Yuna pulled back from the hug, wiping her eyes. She looked around the room, seeming to finally notice Dr. Sun-mai and Chief Hanbin. "What's going on? Why is Mom here?" "Your mother," Dr. Sun-mai said, sounding almost excited, "has just demonstrated the most extraordinary quantum perception abilities I've ever seen. The Confederation wants to offer her a position. A very important position," Shaq added. He touched a control on the table, and a hologram appeared in the air. It showed a beautiful building that seemed to be made of crystal and light, surrounded by gardens that contained plants unlike anything on Earth. "This is the Central Institute for Quantum Consciousness Studies," he explained. "It's located on our capital world, Lumeria. We would like your mother to become the first human researcher there." Yuna sat down heavily in a chair. "First human. Mom, what did you do?" Jaiho smiled. "The same thing I've always done, honey. I see the numbers. It turns out that's more special than we knew." Chief Hanbin stepped forward. "Ambassador, while this is an incredible opportunity, there are security concerns. No human has ever been given direct access to Confederation quantum technology before. The political implications alone are exactly why we need this." Shaq interrupted smoothly. "Earth wants to join the Confederation as a full member. But there are those in our government who believe humans aren't ready, that your species is too young, too unstable. Jiho could change their minds." He turned to face Jiho directly. "Your work would have three main goals. First, helping us understand how human brains can process quantum information naturally. Second, using your abilities to advance our quantum technology. And third, proving that humans and Confederation species can work together as equals. The salary and benefits would be substantial," Dr. Sunmai added quickly. "All your past debts would be cleared. You'd have full diplomatic status." Jaiho barely heard her. She was looking at the hologram, seeing the quantum patterns that flowed through the crystal building. Even in this simple projection, she could tell the Institute was a place of incredible beauty and complexity. "What about Yuna?" she asked. "Could she visit me there?" "Better than that," Shaq said. "We would provide housing for both of you. Yuna could continue her studies at the Lumerian Science Academy, if she wishes. Many of our researchers bring their families." Yuna grabbed her mother's hand. "Mom, this is amazing. It's like all your dreams coming true at once." But Chief Hanbin wasn't finished with his concerns. "The Security Council will need to review this, and the Science Council has already seen proof of Jaiho's abilities." Dr. Sunmai interrupted. "I'll testify in her favor. The benefits to Earth's scientific development alone would be worth any political complications." "There's something else you should consider," Shaq said quietly. "Jaiho, would you look at this?" He placed a new object on the table. It looked like a small black cube, completely smooth and featureless. But when Jaiho looked at its quantum structure, she gasped. "It's alive," she whispered. "The quantum fields, they're moving like brain patterns, but so much more complex than anything I've ever seen." Shaq nodded. "This is a quantum consciousness core. It contains the stored knowledge of one of our greatest scientists, who died 1,000 years ago. We've been trying to access it fully for centuries, but the quantum patterns are too complex for our technology to decode. But I can see how they move," Jaiho said, fascinated. "It's like reading a book written in mathematics. Beautiful, but sad somehow. Lonely." "Exactly," Shaq said. "You're not just seeing the patterns, you're understanding their emotional content. This is why we've been searching for people like you. You could help us unlock knowledge that's been lost for generations." Chief Hanbin frowned. "This goes beyond normal security concerns. If she can read your quantum storage devices directly, then she's even more valuable than we thought." Dr. Sunmai cut in. "Think about it, Chief. She could help us understand Confederation technology from the inside out. We wouldn't have to reverse engineer everything." "And that doesn't worry you?" Hanbin asked. "The political implications of having that much access to alien technology." "What worries me," Shaq said firmly, "is how many more people like Jaiho might be out there, their gifts wasted because of poverty or lack of opportunity. How many potential geniuses are sleeping in the streets of Earth's cities tonight?" Jaiho felt Yuna squeeze her hand. She looked at her daughter and saw tears in her eyes again, but this time they looked like tears of pride. "Mom," Yuna said softly, "remember when I was little, and you used to tell me that mathematics was the language of the universe? You were right. And now, the universe wants to talk to you." Jai-Ho felt her own eyes filling with tears. She looked around the room at these people who would shape her future. The alien ambassador who had seen her true worth. The security chief who worried about the bigger picture. The scientist who had moved from skepticism to support. And her beloved daughter who had never stopped looking for her. "If I accept," she said carefully, "I want to make one condition." Shakhtar tilted his head curiously. "What condition?" "When we find others like me, and we will find them, I want to help them, no matter where they come from, no matter their circumstances. Nobody should have to live on the streets just because times get hard." The ambassador's eyes seemed to glow brighter. "That is exactly the kind of thinking we hoped to find in humanity. You don't just want to use your gift, you want to help others discover theirs." "The Social Services Department could help," Chief Hanbin said thoughtfully, "if we developed a testing program for quantum perception abilities. And the Science Council could provide education and training," Dr. Sunmai added, warming to the idea. "A whole new field of study, combining human intuition with Confederation quantum science." Yuna hugged her mother again. "See, you're already changing things, Mom. You're going to help so many people." Jai-Ho looked at the quantum consciousness core on the table, at its complex patterns of stored thoughts and memories. She had spent 3 years feeling lost, worthless, invisible. But now she could see her path forward, clear as the mathematics that had always been her closest friend. "I accept," she said. Shakhtar stood up, his tall form seeming to fill the room with starlight. "Then let me be the first to welcome you, Professor Park Ji-Ho, to the Confederation Institute for Quantum Consciousness Studies. Chief Hanbin, Dr. Sunmai, I trust you can help with the necessary arrangements." They nodded, already pulling out their neural implants to begin the process. But Jai-Ho barely noticed. She was holding her daughter's hand, looking at the hologram of her future home, and seeing patterns of possibility unfold like flowers made of pure mathematics. She had asked for one credit. Instead, she had been given the chance to help bridge the gap between two species, to unlock the secrets of consciousness itself, and most importantly, to make sure no other brilliant mind would have to suffer as she had. As the others discussed logistics and security clearances, Jai-Ho studied the quantum consciousness core again. Its pattern seemed less lonely now, as if it too was happy to be understood at last. Soon she would learn its secrets, and help humanity take its first steps into a larger universe of knowledge and understanding. The streets of New Seoul were far below them now, but Jai-Ho made a silent promise to remember them, and to reach back down to help others rise up. After all, every quantum field was connected, every pattern part of a larger whole. Just like every person, no matter how lost they seemed, was part of humanity's greater story. A story that was about to enter a new chapter, written in the universal language of mathematics, told by a woman who had never lost her ability to read its endless, beautiful patterns. 1 week after accepting the Confederation's offer, Jai-Ho sat in a large meeting room at the Earth Science Council headquarters. The room's windows showed the gleaming towers of New Seoul, but she barely noticed the view. She was too busy watching the quantum patterns that danced around the group of scientists seated at the long table. Dr. Sunmai sat beside her, along with Ambassador Shakhtar and Chief Hanbin. Across the table, 5 senior members of the Science Council looked at Jai-Ho with varying degrees of skepticism. Yuna waited outside, sending encouraging messages through Jai-Ho's newly restored neural implant. "This is highly irregular," said Dr. Min, the eldest council member. "Professor Park has been absent from the scientific community for 3 years. Her credentials are outdated. We cannot simply allow her to represent Earth in such an important position." Jai-Ho noticed how the quantum fields around Dr. Min twisted with tension and doubt. She had learned over the past week that emotions affected quantum patterns in subtle ways. The Confederation scientists were very interested in her observations about this. "Dr. Min," Sunmai began, "I've personally verified Professor Park's abilities. They are extraordinary. She was living on the streets. Another council member interrupted. How can we trust someone who couldn't even manage their own affairs to handle sensitive alien technology? Jai-ho felt the old shame trying to rise up, but she pushed it down. She wasn't that person anymore. Before she could speak, Shakhtar's deep voice filled the room. On my world, he said, there is a story about a precious crystal that fell into the mud. Some people walked past it, thinking it was worthless because it was dirty. But one person stopped, picked it up, and cleaned it. The crystal's value never changed. Only people's perception of it did. This isn't about stories, Dr. Min said firmly. This is about Earth's scientific reputation. We need someone properly qualified. Then test me, Jai-ho said quietly. The room fell silent. Even Shakhtar turned to look at her with interest. Test me, she repeated, stronger now. Give me your hardest quantum physics problems. Let me prove what I can do. Dr. Min exchanged looks with the other council members. Very well, he said finally. Dr. Lee, please share the quantum encryption puzzle. A younger council member activated his neural implant, sending data to the room's holographic display. A complex series of quantum patterns appeared in the air, rotating slowly. This is a Confederation encryption system, Dr. Lee explained. We've been trying to understand its basic principles for months. If you're as gifted as they claim, Professor Park, perhaps you can tell us how it works. Jai-ho stood up and walked to the hologram. The quantum patterns were beautiful, like a dance frozen in time. She let her mind sink into the mathematics, seeing how each piece connected to the others. It's not encryption, she said after a moment. At least, not in the way you think. Dr. Lee frowned. What do you mean? You're thinking of it like a lock and key system, but it's more like a living thing. Jai-ho reached out and touched the hologram, making it spin faster. See these patterns here? They're modeled on quantum processes in organic brains. The system doesn't block information, it grows it. She began to explain, using simple analogies when she could and complex mathematics when she had to. She showed them how the system created new quantum states based on the user's own thought patterns, how it could generate unlimited unique keys that were nevertheless perfectly secure. As she spoke, she noticed the quantum fields around the council members changing. Their doubt was being replaced by curiosity, then understanding, and finally excitement. This is remarkable, Dr. Lee whispered. We've been approaching it completely wrong. Instead of trying to break the encryption, we should have been trying to understand its biology. Sunma finished. Jai-ho, how did you see this so quickly? Because she sees quantum patterns the way you see colors, Shakhtar said. This is what we've been trying to tell you. Her gift isn't just about mathematics. It's about understanding the fundamental nature of reality itself. Chief Hanbin, who had been quietly observing until now, spoke up. The Security Council will want to know about this. If she can understand Confederation systems this easily, then she's exactly what both our species need. Shakhtar finished. Someone who can bridge the gap between human and Confederation technology. Dr. Min was looking at Jai-ho with new respect. Professor Park, could you design something similar? Something that combines human and Confederation approaches. Jai-ho smiled. The quantum patterns around her were singing with possibilities. Actually, I already have some ideas. May I? She gestured at the holographic controls, and everyone watched in amazement as she began to craft new quantum structures in the air. She combined the organic patterns of the Confederation system with elements inspired by human neural networks. The result was something entirely new, a hybrid system that drew strength from both approaches. This is, Dr. Lee stared at the rotating patterns. This is revolutionary. The applications for quantum computing alone. And this is just the beginning, Sunmai said excitedly. Imagine what she could do with full access to Confederation technology. The council members were all talking at once now, pointing out different aspects of Jai-ho's design, asking questions about potential applications. Even Dr. Min looked impressed. There's something else you should know, Jiho said, raising her voice slightly to be heard over the excitement. While I was living on the streets, I met others like me. People who see patterns in strange ways, who understand things they shouldn't be able to understand. They're out there, hidden, their gifts wasted because they don't have opportunities. The room grew quiet again. Jiho continued, her voice strong with conviction. If you approve my position with the Confederation, I want to help find these people. I want to create a program that identifies and nurtures these talents, no matter where they come from. Such a program would need significant funding, Dr. Min said, but his tone was thoughtful rather than dismissive. The Confederation would be willing to provide resources, Shaq offered. We've been searching for quantum-sensitive individuals across the galaxy. Having a concentrated population of them on Earth would be incredibly valuable. Chief Hanbin nodded slowly. The Security Council might actually support this. Having more humans who understand Confederation technology would strengthen Earth's position in future negotiations. Jiho felt hope rising in her chest. She could see the quantum patterns around the council members shifting, aligning, coming together like pieces of a complex puzzle. I moved to approve Professor Park's appointment, Dr. Lee said suddenly, and to establish a task force to explore her proposal for identifying others with similar abilities. Seconded, Sun Mai said quickly. Dr. Min looked around the table, then sighed. It seems I was wrong about you, Professor Park. Your circumstances changed, but your brilliant mind remained intact. I vote to approve as well. One by one, the other council members added their agreement. Jiho felt tears in her eyes, but blinked them back. This wasn't just a victory for her. It was a chance to help others who might be lost as she had been. Thank you, she said simply. I won't let you down. No, Dr. Min said with a small smile. I don't believe you will. Dr. Sun Mai, please begin the necessary paperwork. Chief Hanbin will need expedited security clearance. Ambassador Shaq, when can the Confederation begin? The door burst open, interrupting him. Yuna rushed in, ignoring the startled looks from the council members. Mom, the quantum patterns around the building. They're changing. Something's happening. Jiho turned to look out the windows and gasped. The quantum fields that normally flowed invisibly through the city were suddenly visible to everyone, lighting up the sky like curtains of mathematical aurora. Blue-green waves of probability curved between buildings, while sparkles of quantum uncertainty danced like stars. Remarkable, Shaq breathed. The quantum fields are synchronizing on a massive scale. I've never seen anything like it. I have, Jiho said softly. In my dreams, sometimes. But I never thought. She trailed off, watching the beautiful patterns paint the sky. She felt Yuna's hand slip into hers, felt the proud smile of her daughter beside her. Around the room, humans and one very tall alien stood in awe, watching as reality itself celebrated the bridging of two worlds. Jiho squeezed her daughter's hand, remembering the long, cold nights on the streets when she had stared up at the sky and seen only darkness. Now she saw infinite possibility, written in the language of quantum mathematics, promising a future brighter than she had ever dared to dream. The crystal had been lifted from the mud, and it was about to shine brighter than ever before. 5 years had passed since the day Jiho had asked for 1 credit on the streets of New Seoul. Now she stood in the crystalline halls of the Confederation Institute, looking out at the alien sunset of Lumeria. The sky was a deep purple, filled with 2 moons and streams of quantum light that only a few special humans could see. The Institute had changed in those 5 years. What had once been a purely Confederation facility now buzzed with the energy of dozens of human researchers. Jiho watched as a young woman walked past her office, quantum patterns dancing around her like a mathematical halo. Professor Park, the young woman said respectfully as she passed. Jiho smiled, remembering how they had found her living in an abandoned factory in Bangkok. She had been using her quantum perception abilities to repair old computers for other homeless people. Now she was one of the Institute's most promising researchers. Jai-ho's neural implant chimed softly. A message from Yuna appeared in her vision. "Mom, the Earth delegation is arriving. You should come to the landing pad." "On my way," Jai-ho replied. She straightened her formal robes, a combination of traditional Korean design and Confederation materials that shimmed with starlight, and headed for the Institute's main entrance. The landing pad was crowded with both human and alien observers. Ji-ho saw Dr. Sunmai, now Earth's chief representative to the Confederation Science Council, standing with Chief Hanbin, who had become one of the strongest supporters of the Human Quantum Researcher Program. The transport ship descended gracefully, its quantum fields perfectly aligned thanks to modifications Jai-ho had helped design. As it landed, she felt a warm presence beside her. Ambassador Shaq, now her close friend and colleague, stood watching with his characteristic calm interest. "A historic day," he said softly. "The first group of students from the Earth Quantum Academy. Your dream made real." Jai-ho nodded, feeling proud tears in her eyes. The academy had been her idea, born from her promise to help others like herself. It provided education and opportunities to people with quantum perception abilities, regardless of their background or circumstances. The transport's doors opened, and 30 students emerged. They came from all walks of life. Former homeless people, overlooked workers, struggling students. Each one had the special ability to see and understand quantum patterns naturally. Each one had been found and given a chance, just as Jai-ho had been given a chance that day on the street. Yuna, now the Academy's lead administrator, stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome to the Confederation Institute for Quantum Consciousness Studies," she said warmly. "You are about to begin an adventure that will change not only your lives, but the future of human Confederation relations." Jai-ho watched as the students looked around in wonder. She could see the quantum patterns around them shifting with excitement and nervousness. One young man in particular caught her attention. His quantum field was unusually complex, reminding her of her own. "That's Kim Ta-won," Yuna whispered to her mother. "We found him living in his car in Busan. He was using his abilities to help other homeless people find safe places to sleep by reading the quantum patterns of the city." Jai-ho's heart warmed. This was exactly what she had hoped for. Finding people who used their gifts to help others, even when they had nothing themselves. Dr. Sunma stepped forward to address the group. 5 years ago, Professor Park showed us that incredible talents could be found in unexpected places. Since then, our joint program with the Confederation has identified over 300 humans with quantum perception abilities. You are the first class to be formally trained from the beginning. Chief Hanbin added, "Your security clearances have all been approved. You'll have full access to both human and Confederation quantum technology. Use this opportunity well." The students listened attentively, but Jai-ho could see they were distracted by the quantum patterns that filled the alien sky. She remembered her own first day on Lemuria, how overwhelming and beautiful it had been. "Professor Park," one of the students called out, "is it true you were homeless when the Confederation found you?" A hush fell over the crowd. 5 years ago, that question might have filled Jai-ho with shame. Now she stepped forward proudly. "Yes," she said clearly. "I lost everything in the economic crisis. I lived on the streets for 3 years, but I never lost my ability to see the patterns, to understand the quantum nature of reality. That gift was inside me all along, just as it is inside each of you." She gestured at the institute behind her. "Look around. Every researcher here, human and alien, has something unique to offer. We don't care where you came from. We care about where you're going and how you'll use your gifts to help others." Ambassador Shaq moved to stand beside her. "Professor Park has helped bridge the gap between our species. Her work has advanced our understanding of quantum consciousness by decades. But more importantly, she has shown us that greatness can be found anywhere if we only take the time to look." "And to help," Jai-ho added. "It's not enough to find talent. We must nurture it, support it, give it room to grow." She walked down the line of students, looking each one in the eye. Some of you lived on the streets, like I did. Some of you worked humble jobs, feeling out of place, knowing you saw things others couldn't see. Some of you struggled in traditional education because your minds worked differently. But here, those differences are your strength. Una joined her mother, carrying a box of neural implants specially modified for quantum perception. These are your keys to the Institute, she explained. They're calibrated to work with your unique abilities. With them, you'll be able to interact directly with Confederation quantum technology. As the students received their implants, Jai-Ho felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Ta-Won, the young man from Busan, looking at her nervously. "Professor Park," he said quietly, "I've been having these dreams. I see patterns in them, like the ones in the sky. But they show me things, solutions to problems. Is that normal?" Jai-Ho smiled warmly. "Would you like to see something?" She led him to a quiet corner of the landing pad and took out the quantum consciousness core he had first seen 5 years ago. "Look at this. Tell me what you see." Tai-Won's eyes widened as he studied the quantum patterns. It's like a library, but instead of books, it's filled with thoughts and memories. And they're not all alien thoughts. There are human patterns too now. "Exactly," Jai-Ho said proudly. "We've been adding human consciousness patterns to the core, creating a bridge between our species at the quantum level. Your dreams might be showing you new ways to build that bridge." She watched as understanding dawned in his eyes. This was why she had started the academy, to help people like Tai-Won understand their gifts and use them to make the universe a better place. The day continued with tours and orientations. Jai-Ho moved among the students, answering questions, offering encouragement. She saw in each of them a reflection of herself from 5 years ago, lost but gifted, uncertain but full of potential. That evening, she stood in her office again, watching the double moons rise. Una came in and hugged her from behind. "Happy anniversary, Mom," she said softly. 5 years since you asked an alien for spare change." Jai-Ho laughed. "And now look at us, teaching the next generation of human quantum scientists, building bridges between worlds." "You did it, Mom. You kept your promise to help others like you." "We did it," Jai-Ho corrected her. "All of us. The Confederation for giving me a chance, Dr. Sunmai, and Chief Hanbin for supporting the academy. And you, my beautiful daughter, for never giving up on me." They stood together, watching the quantum patterns dance in the alien sky. Somewhere in the streets of Earth's cities, there were still people sleeping rough, their gifts undiscovered. But now there was hope for them. Now there was a path forward, built by a woman who had never lost her ability to see the beautiful patterns that connected everything. Jai-Ho had asked for one credit. Instead, she had received the greatest gift of all, the chance to help others find their own way to the stars. As she watched her first class of students begin their journey, she knew that this was just the beginning. The patterns of possibility stretched out before them, infinite and beautiful, waiting to be understood by minds that could see the quantum dance of reality itself. The homeless woman who had once been invisible was now a beacon of hope, showing others that no matter where they came from, they could touch the stars themselves. All they needed was a chance, just like the one she had been given on that fateful day in New Seoul, when an alien ambassador had seen past her circumstances to the brilliant mind within.